Hello there guys, RMP792 here. So I just made a little vlog on the topic of torturing myself for your sick enjoyment, and now I want to talk about something completely different. Is Armour sexy? This is a question that I realised recently for the simple reason that I realised that in a lot of video games, character designs are deliberately done in such a way as to try and make them sexually appealing. This is often done in fairly unsubtle ways. You've got the characters with the unbelievably large boobs, and characters who stick their posteriors out in ways that, frankly, the human spine is not really designed for. And on the whole, games are getting better for this. But there's one common thing that you often see in games that's a bit silly, which is armour designs that are trying really hard to be sexy. I'm talking in particular about things like the boob plate. In case you don't know, there is the main piece of armour that goes over your chest is a breastplate, and that is designed specifically so that if you get a sword coming towards you, it's designed so that as long as it's not a direct, perfect strike, it'll skitter off to one side. A boob plate is basically a piece of armour that is moulded around a pair of breasts. And the big problem with that is, what that basically does is, instead of skittering off to the side, it'll skitter right into the middle and stab you right through the chest. This is, needless to say, not what you actually want. So, while I certainly get where people who design armour that's trying to be sexy are coming from, the martially trained part of me knows how stupid it is. And so I just find it kind of ridiculous. The same holds true for armour that's been sort of cut off, so that bellies are showing, for example, because basically all that's doing is saying, here are my squidgiest bits, please stab them. And I realised that partially because I know how silly things like that are, and partially because of, I don't know, just some part of my psyche, I actually find effectively full, proper body armour really, really sexy. And this is true of both science fiction-y power armour, this is true of classic medieval armour, and to a certain extent it's even true with modern military armour. And for whatever reason, when that's being worn by a woman, I just find it deeply hot. I mean, I maintain one of the sexiest characters in gaming is Commander Shepard. And for the record, I am referring to FemShep here because, as you may or may not be aware, I tend to play as female characters in video games because, well, I just prefer it, frankly. And so, it's very much one of those things that I really like the design of Commander Shepard's armour, for the simple reason that it looks like bloody armour. She looks strong in it, she looks confident in it, and for whatever reason, I just find that image deeply, deeply sexy. And the thing is that, for the most part, the Mass Effect games are pretty good at making their characters look strong and sexy without over-sexualizing them, and there is a difference. The only character they're really guilty of that with, I think, is probably Miranda. And that's because, well, her costume is incredibly tight and form-fitting, and the camera has a habit of focusing on her ass. And it's one of those things that you can watch, and for whatever reason, I just find Commander Shepard deeply, deeply sexy. Now, does it help that I have a massive crush on Jennifer Hale purely based on her voice? Yes, it does. But at the same time, the armour itself really does something for me, and I have no idea why. And honestly, I'm genuinely curious to know if this is just a thing that I get, because let's face it, to a certain extent, there is this classic archetype of the knight in shining armour, the guy riding in on his white horse to come and save the day. And a lot of women seem to think of that as a as a very sexy image, as this heroic knight coming to save them. And I'm genuinely curious to know if this works the other way. Are there guys out there who find the idea of a woman on a white horse riding in to save them in, proper armor really hot? Because I do. I love that image. And at the same time, do gay guys find the image of the knight in shining armor really hot? Or, and I'm genuinely curious to know what people think in this regard. Because for me, a woman in armor, and I'm talking full body covering, I use the original Metroid as an idea. Weirdly, I find armor at its sexiest when it's not immediately obvious the gender of the person inside it. So, the original Metroid was very famous for the fact that at the end, when it was revealed that Samus Aran was a woman, everybody was really shocked. And, that kind of reveal moment of effectively the person taking off their helmet and you're like, holy crap, there's a woman in there. For whatever reason, that, to me, is really hot. A woman who's just encased in so much armor that absolutely nothing could touch her. And I have no goddamn clue why I find this image so appealing. It could just be that I have some really weird thing, but there's a sort of unofficial rule of the internet, which is basically if you go on the internet and admit to having a weird fetish or a weird thing that you find attractive, as a general rule of thumb, about 20 other people will basically pipe up and say, I get that too, it's not that weird. So, I am genuinely curious to know what people think, because you often find people doing sexy versions of characters, and whether that be people doing fan art or people doing cosplay, and as a general rule of thumb, the way that they sexy something up is that they take away bits of the armor. There's a great example of this in the cosplayer Liana Vamp. Don't know if you've seen her, very talented cosplayer, and she has a Stormtrooper cosplay where, it's just basically full-on Stormtrooper armor, though she does tend to do it without the helmet. And, she looks really hot in it. And she's got effectively a sexy variant of it, which basically removes the plate that goes over her belly. And for whatever reason, I find that less attractive than her in the full armor. And I have no goddamn idea why. Most people would probably argue that she's sexier in the version that shows off a little bit more skin. And I can completely get why a lot of people think that. But for whatever reason, I think that she's hotter wearing the full body covering armor. I genuinely don't know why I get this, but I am genuinely curious to know. So, comment section, please go nuts on this one. I want to know if this is just me or if this is something that other people get, and I'm genuinely curious to know. I probably don't have a big enough fan base to get a good actual reaction to this in terms of knowing, in terms of lots of people commenting and giving me really good feedback, but we'll see. Share it around. I'm genuinely curious to know. So, until then, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in future videos.